This is Aging with Strength. I'm Paul von Zielbauer. Today we're going deep on all things menopause, specifically for men, with my guest, Dr. Annie Fenn. She's an obstetrician gynecologist who became one of the first certified menopausal health experts in the United States a quarter century ago. Annie is also the author of a best-selling book, Brain Health Kitchen, and a Substack column of the same name. Annie Fenn, welcome back to Aging with Strength.
Hi, happy to be here.
So, Annie, in this conversation, we're going to talk about a lot of things that have to do with menopause for men. And what's the proper way for men to think about menopause generally, menopause vis-a-vis their partners, how to better understand the physiology and the social expectations that come with these midlife changes in women. We're going to talk about hormone replacement therapy, aka HRT, and there's a new acronym for that, and the benefits of what that can bring for women in menopause. And we're going to talk about alcohol and its relationship to this period in women's lives, no pun intended. We're going to talk about nutrition and how to eat. We're going to talk about some books you can read. And then we're also going to talk about sex and intimacy during this time. Does that sound good to you?
I love it. This is one of my favorite topics.
I'm glad because I'm going to learn a lot. But I'd like to ask you first, Annie, can you just describe or define menopause and perimenopause? There's two different realms here. And if you could just tell us what each is.
Oh, sure. So menopause is the actual event of the last menstrual period. Okay. And
The actual event of the last
menstrual period a woman has. And so it is a retrospective diagnosis. You don't know you've had your last one until you've gone, the definition says, a full year without one.
Wow.
So it's not a very useful definition clinically, but that's what menopause actually means. Okay. And with the last menstrual period, of course, the reproductive function has changed and a woman is no longer able to become pregnant.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to stop right. We didn't get 30 seconds into it, and I'm like, what? You have to wait a year before, I know it's sort of clinical and definition and all that, but a year has to go by before you can say menopause.
I know this sounds crazy, but medically speaking, that is the definition of menopause. That's why knowing what perimenopause is so important. It's much more important because perimenopause is the transition. On average, it's 7 years before the last menstrual period, leading up to it, and afterwards. So a woman is in this perimenopausal time period for many, many years. A lot of times she's not sure when it started. She's not sure if it's officially ended. And then when her period actually stopped, she doesn't know if it's actually really stopped for good or if it's just paused because it's perimenopause.
Well, that's a lot to throw at a woman's body and brain and life, isn't it?
It is. And so there's so much uncertainty in this time period. And there's also a lot of misunderstanding in the medical community. So, finding a healthcare practitioner that kind of understands this time of life is really key because it doesn't require a lot of blood tests or any specialized tests at all, really. It just requires talking to a woman with all of these things in mind. So once a woman's diagnosed as menopausal, it is good to know that you no longer need birth control. But it's a year past the last menstrual period.
Okay.
So
during perimenopause, pregnancy is still possible, right?
Absolutely. And as you know, I practiced OBGYN for 20 years. The last 10 years of it, I specialized in menopause as a menopausal health educator. Mm-hmm. And I delivered women in their late 40s and early 50s. I can count on two hands the number of people I've delivered between the ages of 45 and 55. So yeah, I can say for sure that it happens.
What ages typically does perimenopause show up? What kind of age range?
The age range can be as early as mid-30s for some women, but usually it's sometime in the 40s. Early to mid to late 40s is usually when perimenopause begins. Now, the only clue women have sometimes is that their cycles are changing slightly. Okay, so it might be a woman who had a baby at the age of 38, and then she breastfeeds for a year, and then her cycles are slowly coming back at age 39 or 40, but they never come back normal. They come back shorter, meaning like cycle length shorter, different every month. That can be the beginning of perimenopause.
A lot
of men
are
no stupid questions. about
Well,
this topic.
just wait, Annie. Tell me if you think that afterward. But part of my reason for wanting to do a podcast and conversation with you on menopause for men is that there seems to be so many landmines, either real or perceived, either by men or by women or both. And those landmines may be different depending on who you are and what part of that equation you're on.
But if you think about a menstrual cycle, there's many hormones at play, mostly estrogen, progesterone. And they rise and then they fall, and then they rise and then they fall. So a woman that's perimenopausal, she's getting all these signals from her hypothalamus to make more estrogen or make less estrogen. And so her estrogen's going way up and then way down radically. Like the slope of the curves are changing a lot. And every month is a little bit different. So when you check that blood test, it really depends on, it's just a moment in time. It's just a snapshot of where she might be in a crazy cycle. It's really not very helpful until a woman has stopped menstruating for at least a month or two, like she skipped a couple periods. And then there's a blood test you can do that may be indicative that she's perimenopausal. But then it can change again. So going back to the initial definition of menopause, where you wait a year, which I'm not recommending people do, but the definition was based on that. It takes a whole year of no periods for those blood tests to stay at a certain cutoff.
Okay, so a year of no periods, and then you've officially entered the gates of menopause.
Exactly.
And prior to that, like you said, it might be a roller coaster of some cycles show up, some may not. Your estrogen or other hormone, progesterone, you think you said, might go up, might go down. So measuring them really isn't indicative because it's not telling you a trend. It's just showing a point in time.
Yes, although it is a big industry, as you know. And,
Yeah, so that's the other thing. It seems like before, a couple of years ago, we weren't talking about menopause nearly as much as, and not nearly enough, as we are now. Is that just my impression, or is something changing in the culture?
like when I got my menopausal expertise certificate from the North American Menopause Society, it was the first year that they offered the test. It was back in 2000. That was a long time ago, and there were only a handful of menopause experts in the country back then. Okay, so fast forward to now, like menopause is a big deal, and on social media there are many, menopause experts talking about it. It's mostly driven by our aging population. Okay, first it was the baby boomers, which of course is a big bubble, entering menopausal age groups. But baby boomers weren't so tech savvy, weren't so vocal on social media. Okay, so then after that came the millennials. And when the millennials started to go through perimenopause and menopause, they really wanted answers, and they really wanted to talk about it, like on, the way we talk about it nowadays on social media and platforms and Substack and things like that. So that was the main driver. And then a bunch of celebrities got involved, like Naomi Watts and a few others. And a lot of OBGYNs decided to make menopause their platform. And I think there must be like 10 books written by OBGYNs about menopause that came out in the last couple of years.
What's the one or two greatest misconceptions or things you wish men understood or knew about menopause that you feel like generally we don't?
Well, number one, it's a transition that happens over a long period of time. And it's not something you can just fix, And so you can't just say, go to the doctor, get on hormones, and you're going to be fine. And number two, women have a really difficult time finding healthcare practitioners that know what they're talking about when it comes to perimenopause and menopause.
So wait a minute. So going to a board-certified OBGYN isn't automatic finding someone who knows what they're talking about?
No, it's extremely difficult, and it's getting better. But the reason it's difficult is you've heard of that study, the Women's Health Initiative, right? That came out in like 2003. And that was the one that overstated that there was a risk of breast cancer when taking menopausal hormone therapy, which later was rescinded. We actually knew that breast cancer cases were less in estrogen's arm of that study. Anyways, it scared off an entire generation of women and doctors off hormone therapy. Okay, so now here we are, more than 20 years later, we have a generation of OBGYNs who didn't get any menopause training. Okay.
Because of that one study's false signal on a connection between HRT and hormone replacement therapy and breast cancer, which was false.
Amazingly, yes. Yes, it was like the first major study that was like discussed on the Today Show by Matt Lauer, and he completely misinterpreted it. And so did a lot of other physicians. In order to find a doctor who knows how to prescribe hormone therapy, who's had experience with it, you literally need to find someone who's over 50, who trained before this all happened, and also had experience taking care of women in clinical practice after residency before the WHI, or someone who's newly certified in menopause, of which there are a lot of young doctors who are, filling in the needs. But there is a huge gap.
That's so interesting. So the strategy is to go after a 31-year-old newly minted MD, or go after somebody who over 50, like you said, who was around before this the scare of the Women's Health Initiative in 2003 happened.
Yeah, exactly. And also, this is counterintuitive to women because women choose female OBGYNs now more than male. But back then, back when menopause was being practiced and discussed, that age of doctor is half as likely to be male as female.
Right. So choose an old male OBGYN. or
Counterintuitive. And over 50, I wouldn't
Mhm,
say old, I would
mhm.
say a mature, experienced male or female physician who had experience taking care of women.
So I asked you earlier, what are the one or two things you wish men knew? And one of the things you said was that it's just a long process and it's very complicated. Is there another thing that you wish men knew or understood, or think wrongly about menopause and perimenopause?
Well, one thing that often is a misconception is that emotional symptoms are driving this whole phase. And that's part of it, but there's a lot more things going on than, what's happening to a woman's emotions during perimenopause. And the emotional changes, like, I guess would be like emotional ability, like crying easily or seeming sensitive or things like that, they're almost always secondary to other things, like lack of sleep and not feeling like yourself. Okay. So it's not really like an emotional problem, it's really a sleep problem. Perimenopausal women tend to have very poor sleep quality,
Mm.
and it's compounded by the fact that a lot of women don't get enough sleep anyways because of their caregiving, that they do for everyone in their families. I think it helps to zoom out a little bit
Okay.
and zoom less on individual symptoms, and just look at the whole thing. It's a woman who, when she was, say, 30 or 35, she was working full time, taking care of the kids, taking care of her parents, staying on top of her social life, taking care of maybe her husband and pets as well, like staying on top of every little thing in her life. And
Hmm.
then she hits perimenopause, and the lack of sleep, the tendency to become pre-diabetic, which is something we can talk about, means that you feel differently in your body. You work
Hmm.
out, you don't get the same results. And then there's this other thing called the bioenergetic crisis, which has been described in the brain of perimenopausal women when estrogen declines really rapidly during part of the cycle. It's like they have zero energy. Okay, it's like putting your head down on the desk in the middle of the day kind of feeling. So you get these vibrant women that are handling it all, doing it all, on top of everything, and then perimenopause hits and you get this constellation of symptoms.
I'm just trying to see if you think there's any way that men can relate to the physiological changes that women go through in menopause. If there's any kind of corollary that physiologically men could understand a little better.
It's akin to an athlete who can't exercise anymore and who struggles with the lack of energy, struggles with the changes in appetite, maybe changes in weight, struggles with not sleeping as well, and then that whole fallout it does on your mental health and your mood. But when you have an orthopedic injury, it's kind of like you have a finite amount of time that you're recovering, and then things just get better and better and better and better.
Okay.
And perimenopause is like that too, but it's not finite because women tend to go through it for many years. It's better on the other side for sure, and it can be better during perimenopause if treated properly. A lot of women don't get the treatment that they need or want, and so there's a lot more uncertainty in the perimenopause.
Can we talk about treatments for a moment? We talked about some of the way that it shows up, in a woman's life, head down on the desk, lack of energy, driven by lack of, changes in sleep and so forth. But also, aren't there some big changes hormonally, of course, going on in a woman's body too? Can you tell us, kind of give us the primer on that, please?
Oh, sure. So estrogen is the primary hormone of, the female body. It's the master regulator, and there's estrogen receptors everywhere in the body, including the brain. And we actually didn't know this until recently, until Dr. Lisa Mosconi, who's a neuroscientist from Weill Cornell, she discovered a marker where you can look for these estrogen receptors throughout the body. And she found hundreds in the brain. Okay. So think about that. Your estrogen's going up really high and then it's coming down with an overall trend to lower. Okay. So in the brain, that looks like changes in thinking and memory skills. When I was a menopause doctor, a lot of women came to me afraid that they were getting early Alzheimer's in their 40s or 50s. And it's not Alzheimer's. It's just that when your estrogen dips and it's lower level all over, then short-term memory loss suffers, word retrieval suffers. That's been called whatchamacallit syndrome. We all have difficulty retrieving names of things or people that we don't see that very often, or if we're tired, that this can happen a lot. And that's what it feels like. All of these cognitive things. I've had women who are accountants who come in and tell me that they can't look at a spreadsheet the way they normally can and understand it during a
Wow.
certain time in their cycle. The numbers don't make as much sense. They have to think a lot harder and they get
Huh.
like fatigued from it.
Huh.
And so this can be very distressing, as you can imagine, to a woman or anyone who's starting to experience these symptoms. And then in the body, you feel there's a certain amount of fatigue, which can be a fallout, of course, from sleep and everything else. A tendency not to not exercise, but it gets more difficult. I don't know any women who don't want to exercise during perimenopause or menopause, but it becomes more difficult because of a lot of other circumstances, mostly lack of sleep and, food choices.
Okay, so you're an author of this excellent book called Brain Health Kitchen. So let's talk for a minute, if you don't mind, about those food choices that can either help or hurt or not help at all women who are in perimenopause or menopause.
Absolutely. So you're probably aware of the data of when you get a poor night of sleep, you make poor food choices, right? So you're more likely to reach for refined carbohydrates, say a muffin in the morning instead of a bowl of oatmeal, right? So when a woman becomes perimenopausal, estrogen helps prevent diabetes in the body in a female. And so women are constantly pushing back against this pre-diabetic state. Their glucose is more up and down. The body wants to deposit more visceral fat inside the body. And so women are constantly pushing back against that. And then the food choices are even more difficult because of this lack of sleep. So the way to combat it is to eat for your glycemic control, regularity. Eat for stable blood sugar, like a pre-diabetic or a
Okay,
diabetic.
so what does that mean? Does that mean yogurt and berries and not muffins and cookies and ice cream at night and so forth? Or
Exactly.
what's the...
It's eating a diet that's very much like the Mediterranean diet. It's actually the only diet that's been studied to alleviate perimenopausal symptoms because it's mostly whole foods. Perimenopausal women would do well to limit or completely avoid ultra processed foods, which just kind of keeps feeding this, abnormal glucose cycle. Okay. High in protein. Weight training, I would add, is mandatory for
Hmm.
perimenopausal women to push back against this pre-diabetic state. The more muscle you have on your body and are able to maintain, it's like a sink to glucose. The less likely you are to have problems with glucose regulation.
And since this is a podcast called Menopause for Men, what's your advice to the men in these women's lives to help them feel better and also just kind of help the men also stay on track?
So there's some easy ways you can support a partner who's going through menopause, for sure. But the tricky part, of course, Paul, is to do this in a non-judgmental way. Like
Well,
the
that's not
the
possible.
last thing in the world a
Okay.
perimenopausal woman probably wants to hear is, "Oh, is it your hormones again? Have some berries." What would be far
Okay.
more helpful
Yeah.
would be like, "Hey, hon, I think you probably had a rough night's sleep. I ran out to the grocery store. I got some snacks that I think you like, and do you want me to do dinner tonight? Women have a lot on their plates, and to have to nag their partner to do one more thing that seems quite obvious to them, like everybody needs to eat every night, the family needs to eat every night. It seems quite obvious, right?
Yeah.
But to always have to be in charge of that sometimes can be that one added thing that just, is just really hard to deal with. So being proactive would be really great. Hey, I'm on my way home from work. I'm running by the grocery store. I was thinking it'd be good to have, you like that chicken dish that I make sometimes. Does that sound good to you? And also an enabling role, enabling being like, you know that she wants to go to the gym or she wants to get that workout in, at the home gym, wherever, but she also has other things to do. Enabling time for working out is key. Whether like if
Okay.
you have kids, maybe like I'm taking the kids to the movies. I know
Hmm.
you want to get your workout in. Little things like that, I think, can go a really long way.
It can be hard to sort of remember to do what seem like basics in a podcast conversation because you have the maelstrom of the relationship, the tensions, the little resentments, everything that goes into being with a partner for a long time.
It can be super tough. And another way is to have a frank conversation. Like, I don't know that much about perimenopause. I'm happy to go to the doctor with you. I want to learn more. But could you let me know, like, what you need? And if it's hard to do in the moment when you're not feeling good, maybe when you're feeling really good on one day, just make me a list of the things that you would like. When you look at the food issue, it would be helpful not to have ultra processed foods around the house, right? That's an easy one. And I would include sugary beverages in that, anything
Let's
that,
be specific. So we're talking about like pasta, ice cream, muffins, like what else? What
no,
else?
no, no, I'm talking mostly about like soda pop or sweetened drinks, like sweetened iced tea,
Mhm.
energy drinks, things like that. That would be like an easy fix. It might be something that would raise a woman's blood sugar and kind of exacerbate all these symptoms she's already going
What
through.
about fruit juice?
Fruit juice is high in sugar. It's on my limit or avoid list for sure.
Oh, so just, squeezed orange juice, no sugar added, that's off the list.
That would be a nice thing to have with breakfast, but I wouldn't use it as a drink, like something like a post-workout drink or something like that. And I don't recommend juicing in general
Mm-hmm.
because it's got antioxidants and it's got glucose for sure, sugar, but without the fiber, that glucose is not absorbed evenly. So I would just avoid having like these problematic foods around the house and stocking the fridge. If a partner wanted to be like a super partner, he could go grocery shopping. He or she could go grocery shopping,
Oh,
okay,
come on, Annie. That's ridiculous.
and
Let's be realistic
stock the
here.
fridge with things like, berries and apples that you can cut up ahead of time,
Yeah.
and whole yogurt, whole milk yogurt, or non-fat yogurt, whatever she likes, that's unsweetened. Even cottage cheese, things like that are high in protein. Whole grain bread, good almond butter, things like that are easy grab and go snacks.
Nuts
Berries,
and seeds?
nuts and seeds. And
Hmm.
we should probably talk about alcohol too, because alcohol, as you know, is on my limit or void list for brain health based on a lot of recent data. I drink red wine, I drink alcohol sometimes, but in a very limited amount. And I
Hmm.
know from experience and from studies that perimenopausal women lose their ability to tolerate alcohol. And so at the end of the day, after a lot of stressful things happening, not feeling good in your body, maybe not being well rested, et cetera, a glass of wine sounds really good to a perimenopausal woman, but it's really does is detrimental to her sleep cycle.
So even a glass of wine with, a bowl of or a plate of healthy food like you talked about, you're saying not so good idea?
Not such a good idea. And so it might seem really helpful to, get a really nice bottle of wine and bring that and open that over dinner and split it with your partner, which is normally not a problem sometimes, but that can certainly exacerbate the sleep problems that a woman's having. That.
Okay. Well, what if it's, a good 3 hours or more before bedtime, that one glass of wine with food? You're still saying just not a good idea?
That might be okay. Everyone metabolizes alcohol differently, and women have less of the enzyme in their stomach to metabolize it right off the bat. They also have less water in their bodies, and so they're not as rapid metabolizers of alcohol as men. Number one. Plus, that body is changing. And so it's hard to say what an individual person's reaction would be. And everyone has their own relationship with alcohol.
Yeah.
Some women are totally fine with one and done, and others, one means two.
Is there a book or article that you would recommend men read that, is easily digested?
Absolutely. Okay, I have a couple books for you. I had a feeling you were going to ask me. One is The Menopause Brain by
Okay.
Lisa Mosconi. This talks about what exactly is happening in the brain of a perimenopausal and menopausal woman. One gem from this book is that the amygdala is the part of the brain that is responsible for emotional regulation, right? And as a woman goes through menopause and towards the end of it, her amygdala doesn't really react to negative stimuli as like it used to. You've heard the phrase, the Instagram club, the I do not care club.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about this, right? The I
I
do
don't
not.
know, but I saw the lady who started it, and she's just on fire. Yeah.
Okay, that's the amygdala. The I do not care club is women don't care about stuff that they used to. And that's because the amygdala has been regulated in such a way that it changes during menopause. And what that means for a partner is, she doesn't care so much about things that are expected of her that she might have cared about before, like taking care of everybody or setting a perfect table, okay, or looking a certain way or acting a certain way. So just know that the amygdala is changing during menopause, and Lisa does a great job talking about that. And then another book that I really like is by Dr. Jessica Shepard called Generation M. This one is pretty basic and easy to read, okay? Dr. Mary Claire Haver, who is like super famous menopause influencer. She has a new menopause. She has a new book coming out called The New Perimenopause. I don't think a guy could go wrong by buying these books as a gift for their partner either.
You mean the men buying it for women who are
Buying it
experiencing
for
these?
themselves and reading it, sharing it with their partner. There's so much information. And then I've written a lot of articles on my Substack that I can share with you about what to eat, about how to access a exercise program, about all the things that are happening in terms of visceral fat, like what happens to metabolic health during perimenopause. So I've summarized a lot of the data, and I can share some of those articles with you too, which would be faster to read.
I do want to ask you about one last thing, and that is sex and intimacy. It's something that people may not want to talk about, or maybe they do because no one wants to talk about it. But this is a big deal, of course, during this time in women's lives. Can you tell us what you think men need to know about the changes in, a couple's intimate relationship and sexuality and sex itself with them?
Yeah, great point. Most of the time, my experience taking care of women, most of the time it's not because of the relationship. It's not something about the guy. It's not like she's mad at you, although she might be, but that's not usually it. It more is this constellation of not feeling like yourself, not sleeping well, and just only having so much energy in a day to do so many things. And so sometimes sex gets, pushed away. And it can be compounded by physical symptoms of vaginal dryness and pain with penetration due to lack of estrogen in the vaginal tissues. Okay? And that is an easy fix because vaginal estrogen is very easy to use. I'm talking about a cream or a device that's placed inside the vagina that supplies estrogen. It can be used even during perimenopause, even before a woman's officially menopausal. And most doctors are getting on board with the fact that vaginal estrogen is super safe for pretty much everybody, even people who've had breast cancer. So if there's an issue with pain or dryness, that would be the first thing to maybe discuss gently, is maybe some estrogen would help. Okay, vaginal estrogen. Yeah, and then it all comes back to communication. Like if you're able to talk about sex normally, then this shouldn't be too difficult of a conversation to have. But if it's always been a really difficult topic, then it's going to get even harder, I think, during perimenopause. So that might be something you work on now if you anticipate your partner's going to be going through in the next few years.
Yeah, laying the groundwork, so to speak, no pun intended.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Annie, could I also just quickly ask you about HRT? Can you just tell us your thoughts on HRT and what it is and why it's important?
Oh, sure. So HRT is hormone replacement therapy. It usually means a combination of estrogen and progesterone or estrogen by itself, but testosterone could be included in the mix. Okay. The newer way of saying this is MHT, menopausal hormone therapy.
Oh,
Because the thinking is that we're not replacing something, we're just treating a endocrinological disorder like thyroid disease. Okay. So
okay.
menopausal hormone therapy, or MHT, you'll see more and more. But everybody knows what
MHT.
you're talking about when you say HRT.
Okay.
Okay. Some things are controversial, others are not. HRT is incredibly safe for women, especially when they take it early in the menopausal transition. Okay. So maybe not right when they're 38 or something starting to change, but if they have symptoms during their 40s, HRT is safe for most women to take and can alleviate symptoms. Okay. It's safe to take for many years. There used to be a 10-year cutoff, and now we know that this is a year-by-year discussion with a healthcare practitioner about continuing. Okay.
Does it
We
have
know
to be, does it have to be an OBGYN who's you're talking to, or just your MD or your DO?
it could just be your primary care, physician or nurse practitioner if they are used to taking care of menopausal women.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
into that specialty part of it. Taking HRT 10 years after menopause has become less controversial, but some women now are taking it later in life, even if they didn't start it early. And here's the thing that most people don't understand about HRT. We know that it reduces chronic illness, such as osteoporosis, breaking a hip, becoming disabled from that. Huge, right? Huge in older
Yeah.
women. We know it reduces the incidence of heart attack and stroke if taken early in menopause. Okay. We know it reduces the risk of getting colon cancer by about half.
Wow.
Most people don't know that.
Hmm.
And there's data to show that it may help prevent dementia. We don't know that one for sure. It's not FDA approved for the reduction of dementia later in life.
Hmm.
But there are a lot of compelling studies going on that are pointing that way.
Okay.
We know that there's all these health benefits with reducing chronic disease on top of being the best thing for symptom relief.
And
And
what's the,
women
sorry.
should not take estrogen or HRT if they currently have breast cancer.
Okay. What form does HRT or the other menopausal hormone replacement, is that what you said?
MHT.
MHT, sorry. What's the form? Is it a pill? Is it a cream? Is it some or the other? Like, what's the method and how is it expensive?
There are all sorts of formulations. The gold standard now, the things that doctors are mostly prescribing, is an estrogen patch, okay, because it doesn't increase the risk of blood clots at all, whereas the oral formulations did very slightly, plus a progesterone pill. Now, a woman who's had a hysterectomy doesn't need the progesterone. They only need the estrogen patch.
Quickly, what's progesterone versus vis-a-vis estrogen?
Progesterone is sort of like a supporting player in the menstrual cycle. It gets the uterus ready for implantation. It goes super high when a woman gets pregnant to help support the pregnancy.
Okay.
Without progesterone, it's responsible for a lot of the mood symptoms that come with perimenopause.
Okay.
Too much progesterone, not enough progesterone. But taking progesterone at night, this tablet form, actually helps women sleep a lot of the time. Not everybody, but it's kind of a good thing for
Okay.
helping with sleep.
Is there a downside to it, or is it should every woman in menopause be taking it or be open to taking it?
So HRT is not appropriate for everybody. Not every woman wants to be medicalized during menopause, right? Not everybody needs to be treated for symptoms. Their symptoms may be manageable with lifestyle and nutrition, which are very, very important. But every woman deserves a discussion about the pros and cons so she can decide for herself. What's been happening a lot in our medical system is that women aren't even offered, HRT, even though they're candidates. Or the doctor ahead of time is making a decision that this woman's not a candidate when it turns out she actually is. So every woman deserves a conversation, okay? So she can decide for herself whether it's something she wants to do or not. HRT is very safe, but there are a few things that women need to know about it. And the other thing that a lot of people don't realize this, but you can't take HRT when you're perimenopausal to sort out your periods. If period irregularity is part of the problem, HRT is not strong enough to do that. The way you sort those things out are with birth control pills, which calms down the cycle, regulates it, can even get rid of a period, or some, medical interventions.
Annie, I want to thank you so much for taking time to talk with me and the wider world about menopause for men and what men need to know more about menopause and perimenopause. So thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed our discussion. Your questions were not stupid at all. And I have lots of resources for your audience if they want to read more.
Great. I'm glad to hear it.